Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Congresswoman Omar,
safe
can I get your reaction to the shooting that happened in D.C. last night?
I'm going to go for now.
I'm going to go for now, Mark. Couldn't even say condolences for the family.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about a tragic story out of Washington, D.C., involving a radical far leftist by the name of Elias Rodriguez, a 30-some-year-old from Chicago who has been accused of fatally shooting 2 Israeli embassy staff members. In fact, this is not really even alleged because he admitted that he did it, okay, and he shot and killed them outside of the museum during an event hosted by the American Jewish Committee. Okay, Rodriguez shouted "Free Palestine, Free Palestine" after his arrest and claimed that he did it for Gaza. Okay, now this event is a very important story because, like I've been warning you guys, the far left, these are the most violent people in this country. Okay, and until we address the far left domestic terrorism, we're going to continue to see this. This is why when the CEO of United Health was assassinated by another far left lunatic, I said, listen, guys, we should not be celebrating this, right? It's one thing to say, hey, you know what? I'm indifferent about it because I know how people feel about the healthcare system. I get it. It's another to celebrate, okay? You should not be celebrating these far leftists murdering people because these people get emboldened and then they go out and they continue to do it, right? And that's what you're seeing happening here with what happened at this Jewish museum, okay? The suspect, Elias Rodriguez, is a far left activist. Okay, he has a long history of supporting BLM, the Palestine, communist, and anti-white causes. And once again, we're seeing one of these individuals who has been extremely far left. He's radicalized, right? And that radicalization has led him to commit acts of violence, right? That is what happened here. Okay, and it's just a damn shame that the mainstream liberal media continues to ignore this problem in our country, but they want to talk about white supremacy being the problem. No, it's not white supremacy. It is radicalization from these far leftists, right? These people are the biggest terrorist threat to this country, and it's not even close. How many times do we have to see this before the liberal media finally tells the truth about how radical these far leftists are in this country? So I want to talk about it, but before we get into it, we have to have a word from the sponsor of this video, Morgan & Morgan. Life can change in an instant. One moment you're fine, the next, well, everything is different. You're left with questions, with pain, with the feeling that you've been wrong, and the system, well, it feels like it is built against you. This is why you need somebody that's on your side, somebody that understands, somebody that will fight for you. At Morgan & Morgan, they're not just lawyers, they're advocates. They're here to give you a voice when yours feels lost. They've recovered billions for people just like you. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, takes on all types of injury cases from car accidents to medical malpractice. They fight for your rights and the compensation that you deserve if you become their client so that you can focus on healing. They've achieved significant verdicts over the past few months for the victims involved in life-altering car crashes, like out in Florida, a $12 million verdict, which was over 34 times the highest insurance offer. And they work on a contingency fee basis, which means that you don't pay unless you win. It's really that simple, to be honest with you. So you can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at forthepeople.com/blackconservative, which will be in the description below, right? The link will be in the description below, or you can scan the QR code on the screen with your phone's camera. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Other breaking story I mentioned to you that we're following. Police have arrested a man accused of shooting and killing 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. Israel's ambassador to the U.S. told reporters overnight that the man killed had just bought a ring to propose to his girlfriend. You see the victims here, and he was supposed to pop the question in Jerusalem next week. President Trump posted on his social media platform sending his condolences to their families. He also said, quote, "These horrible D.C. killings based obviously on anti-Semitism must end now." CBS News' Naomi Ruckham brings us more on the investigation and what the suspect was heard saying at the scene.
A horrific shooting in Washington, D.C. overnight. 2 Israeli embassy employees, a couple identified as Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram by embassy officials, were shot and killed as they exited the Capitol Jewish Museum just after 9 p.m.
He just ran up. It was terrible.
Police say they were targeted.
He approached a group of 4 people, produced a handgun, and opened fire.
D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith says the suspect, tentatively identified as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, entered the museum shortly after the shooting. Multiple people who were inside the museum at the time said event staff assumed the suspect was a witness of the shooting. Then this happened.
He reaches into his bag and pulls out a keffiyeh and says, "I did it. I did this for Gaza," and just starts shouting "Free Palestine."
This witness captured video of security guards restraining the suspect. Police say the suspect told them where he had discarded the gun and that it was later recovered.
We will not tolerate this violence or hate in our city.
Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and the FBI both say the threat to the community is over. Police and the FBI are investigating whether the attack has potential ties to terrorism and motivations based on hate.
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious at this point, right? I mean, the dude admitted it, right? He said he did it for political reasons, which, again, by the way, I will never understand the people who think that committing acts of violence is okay, especially when you're talking about a foreign conflict, right? I mean, you know, I get it. People are passionate about this issue, but what they're doing, okay, is not going to change what's happening overseas. In this case, this is not acceptable. This should never be acceptable. And like I told you guys, this is a product of the Democrat Party letting the extremism in their party get out of control. That's what this is a product of. This is what happens when you fail to contain the extremism that is happening on the left. Is getting more and more and more out of control.
All right, that was our Naomi Ruckham reporting. For more on this, I'm joined now by Danny Danon. He is the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. My condolences to you. What do you make of this shooting?
It was a horrific attack, you know, not only against the state of Israel or the Jewish community in the United States. It was an attack against the American values in the capital of the United States. And, you know, we saw the incitement in the last few weeks. We saw the chanting on campuses, death to Israel, death to the Jews. We saw the lie that the United Nations blaming us for committing horrible crimes, genocide, and other lies that were spread. And unfortunately, you know, when you incite those words, they have the power to motivate radicals to take actions. And what happened last night in Washington, D.C. was horrible. But it's not enough only to blame the one who actually used the gun to murder 2 innocent victims, but we need to look at those who incite against Israel. And I expect that the authorities, and I'm sure that they will do it, will think about ways not only to condemn anti-Semitism, but to take actions against anti-Semitism.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. You know, I think that we shouldn't just focus on anti-Semitism, okay? I mean, I think that ultimately at the end of the day, you know, radical far-left extremism, I think, is the real problem. Because, again, they're not just doing this stuff because, you know, of the whole Israel-Palestine stuff. No, it's actually bigger than that, right? This is a pattern of behavior that we're seeing from these people. It doesn't matter what the cause is, okay, whether that be Israel-Palestine or healthcare. They feel emboldened to commit acts of violence, okay? We saw this with police brutality, right? We saw this with the BLM riots as a result, the Antifa riots as a result. We saw this when it comes to the issue of abortion. They tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice over abortion, right? So again, it doesn't matter what the issue is. It's not just the anti-Semitism thing. It is a far left radicalization thing. And that's what we have to focus on, right? I think just trying to say, well, you know, is anti-Semitism, that's not really getting to the heart of it. The heart of it really is these far left extremists have become so emboldened that they feel okay committing acts of violence because of their quote unquote cause. And it doesn't matter what the cause is. We've seen this over and over and over again. So with that being said, is CNN actually addressing a real problem? No. What they're doing is that they are trying to basically deflect and to blame Trump. Like this analyst went on CNN and basically tried to claim that the FBI diverting more resources to illegal immigrants could be part of the reason why the FBI can't fight left-wing terrorism as well as they should. Take a look.
I do want to ask you about what this means to Jewish institutions around the United States and the world, and what you think should and could happen as far as the security apparatus that will likely be changed around them.
So two pieces. First of all, the Jewish community, particularly in the United States, is very aware of the threat that they face. And so both at a national level, there are organizations that are dedicated to helping organizations have security, and at regional and local levels, there are institutions that are in place to help them. At the federal level, though, one of my main concerns in the current administration is the fact that so many resources are being diverted to immigration enforcement. And that is a priority of this administration, and that's their prerogative. But at the same time, if they are drawing down resources from counterterrorism components, both within the FBI and the Justice Department, then that potential can have more of an effect. And I think I'll be interested to know whether this individual was on any radar of investigators, considering the fact that he traveled from one location to another to commit this act.
Yeah, those are really good points.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that, okay? Instead of, again, talking about the real issue, which is far-left extremism, this so-called analyst on CNN suggests that, well, President Trump using resources, or the FBI using resources to crack down on illegals, well, that's getting in the way of the counterterrorism operations, okay? And that could allow people like this guy to slip under the cracks because of all the resources being diverted to cracking down on illegal immigration, right? That is essentially the narrative that's being pushed on these news outlets, instead of actually talking about the real problem. And that's why, in my opinion, I think these news outlets are complicit, because they don't want to talk about the problem. Okay, now again, if this person was a right-winger that did this, they would certainly be talking about, well, is there an extremism problem on the right? Okay, is there a problem with domestic terrorism on the right? That's what they would be saying, right? Even when you don't really see that much right-wing violence, to be honest with you. I really don't see all the so-called white supremacists and right-wing violence that these people claim. But again, they still talk about it as if it's some type of like big threat in the country, when it's like, no, that's not actually a real threat. Okay, again, the real threat is these people that, again, have been radicalized on the left, okay, and they've been emboldened to commit these types of acts of violence, because the left at this point, they believe that their causes are just, and that it is worth committing violence in order to achieve what they want. Okay, this is why they have essentially deified the assassin, the murderer of the United CEO. Okay, they deified him because ultimately at the end of the day, they say, well, he's an evil guy because he's a rich CEO of a healthcare company, right? Therefore, you know, these acts of violence are justified, right? And it's like, no. We can't have that. Okay, that is a slippery slope, a very slippery slope that, again, leads to stuff like this. And until the media and the Democrat Party takes responsibility and accountability for the fact that, again, they're not calling this out, that they're not addressing the far left extremism, unfortunately, you know, there may be copycats, right? There are going to be people that feel emboldened, that feel like, hey, you know what? This is my opportunity to gain fame with the far left extremists. And that is essentially, I think, what we're seeing here. I think that's what we're seeing. I think that this guy saw Luigi become deified in the media, again, not really address the issue of far left extremism. And I think that could be a part of what inspired this. I don't know that for certain, but that's just my guess. So with that being said, condolences, thoughts and prayers with the family of the victims. And again, this type of violence has to be addressed. It is getting out of control. Far left extremism is, I think, in my opinion, one of the biggest domestic terror threats in this country. And we're not doing enough to call it out and to address it, even though it is something that has been very prevalent in this country, especially since Trump has been in office. And again, I think the Democrat Party and the liberal media, they're complicit. Okay. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.